So last time we saw that Kuhn advances the following claim. For any pair of scientific theories T and T star, no sentence in T has the same meaning as a sentence in T star, and because of that, no sentence in T can conflict with a sentence in T star. So we saw that he advances that claim and got a sense of what it means. That is what he has in mind. Now we're going to look at the stakes of this claim. That is, why this claim is so important. So here's a common view about scientific progress: convergent realism. And the idea of convergent realism is that science converges toward the truth. So scientific theories, on average, are closer to the truth than the theories that they supplant. Um, so, for example, contemporary theories of the nature of light are probably closer to the truth than 19th century theories were. And those 19th century theories are probably closer to the truth than 15th century theories were, and so on and so on. Okay? One way to think about it is like Einstein's view of gravity supplanted Newton's view of gravity, so it's probably closer to the truth than Newton's view is. Now, convergent realism does not imply that every scientific claim that gets advanced is better than a competing claim that came before it. Instead, it implies that, on average, theories move closer to the truth. So the fact that Einstein advanced his theory after Newton and that Einstein's theory supplanted Newton, that is, the community as a whole decided that Einstein's theory of gravity was superior to Newton's, provides some evidence that Einstein's theory is closer to the truth than Newton's was. Now, convergent realism has a number of significant metaphysical implications. It implies that there is truth, for example. It also has a number of significant epistemic implications. It implies, for example, that we can know the truth. It also has an important semantic implication, and that's the one that Kuhn focuses on. So you might think of this as a metaphysical implication, and it is, but Kuhn is going to frame it as a semantic implication. So here's the implication that will interest us. Convergent realism implies that one theory can be closer to the truth than another. Now, notice that even if you think that some theories are true and others are false, and even if you think that we can know which are true and which are false, here's another significant implication. Convergent realism implies that one theory can be closer to the truth than another. Now, there's a variety of reasons why one might reject this implication. So, for example, if you adopt a principle of bivalence, according to which every proposition is either true or it's false, you might think it's hard to make sense of a notion of closeness to the truth. A proposition is either true or it's false. It doesn't approximate truth or get close to truth. It's one or the other. We're not going to worry about that kind of concern here. I think that kind of concern can be dealt with. Instead, we're going to look at Kuhn's motivation, partly because it's especially influential, for the claim that it's not the case that one theory can be closer to the truth than another. So here's the basic idea. For any scientific theories T and T star, if T is closer to the truth than T star is, then T and T star are in conflict. You can think of it like this. If you have two theories and they don't even go against each other, they're not aiming at the same thing. So it doesn't make any more sense to say one is in conflict with the other than it makes sense to say that blue and yellow are disagreeing about any of the particular claims that they disagreed about, or that they, didn't disagree about, but appeared to disagree about. Premise 2. No sentence in T can conflict with a sentence in T star. Now, why does Kuhn think that no sentence in a scientific theory can conflict with a sentence in another scientific theory? We're going to go over that in some detail below, but what I want you to see is this. It basically falls out of accepting Fregean descriptivism about reference for natural kind terms. That is, if you accept that Frege has the right view, that the Frege-style view of names is the right way to think about how natural kind terms work, about the meaning of natural kind terms, then you just end up having to say that no sentence in one theory can be in conflict with a sentence in another. Now, I don't expect you to see why that is yet, but we'll go over that below. Well, given 1 and 2, that is, if T is closer to truth than T star, that is, if it's the case that T being closer to the truth than T star implies that T and T star conflict, and no sentence in T can conflict with a sentence in T star, it follows that T can't be closer to the truth than T star is. Well, we saw above that convergent realism implies that for some theories, T and T star, T can be closer to the truth than T star is. So it follows from 3 and 4 that convergent realism is false. So the stakes are pretty high here. If Kuhn is right, then convergent realism is false. Convergent realism is the best going account of how to think about scientific progress. If we lose convergent realism, it's hard to say that science progresses at all, as we'll note later on. So you might think a lot is going to turn on whether Frege is right about the semantics for natural kind terms, or that is, a Fregean view is right about the semantics for natural kind terms, or instead some other view is. Okay, so just to reiterate, here are the stakes. If Kuhn's right that scientific theories are incommensurable, then convergent realism is false. Maybe that means there's no scientific progress at all, there's just change. Einstein said one thing, Aristotle said something different, neither is better than the other. Maybe it means that scientific progress consists in something other than proximity to the truth. So maybe Einstein's better than Aristotle, but not because Einstein's theory is truer than Aristotle's. It's for some other reason, like aesthetic reasons or something like that. Well, what I want you to see here is alternatives to convergent realism lose something significant. They lose the view that science is getting us towards the truth. And you might think that's not a big deal, but it leads to the kind of anything goes attitude, the kind of alternative facts attitude that is so corrosive, at least many people think, in society. So, for example, if convergent realism is false, then models of how carbon emissions affect the climate aren't better or worse. It's not like one is closer to the truth than another. They're just what people say. They're just opinions. So the stakes are pretty high. Now, before stopping, I want to return to this argument just to prefigure what we'll be doing next time. So when you look at this argument, what I want you to see is that premise 2 is really where the action is. Why do I say that? Well, premise 4 is just the definition of convergent realism, or I should say it's an implication of convergent realism. That is, the definition of convergent realism implies that 4 is true, because convergent realism says that there's scientific progress, meaning that when one theory supplants another, it's generally speaking closer to the truth than the other, and that implies that for some theories, one is closer to the truth than the other. Nothing too exciting, it's pretty obvious. Premise 1, similarly, is pretty obvious. One says if T is closer to the truth than T star, then the two theories are in conflict. Well, think about it like this. If they're not in conflict, if they're in complete agreement, then they're the same theory, so one can't be closer to the truth than the other. So one has to be true. Well, 3 and 5 are just consequences. That is, 1 and 2 together give you 3, 3 and 4 together give you 5. So if this argument is unsound, it's unsound because 2 is false. Because it's not true that no sentence in T can conflict with a sentence in T star. Accordingly, Kuhn's argument that 2 is true is going to be a pretty important argument. And that's what we'll look at next time.